Welcome to Housing Pulse. I'm Reena Agrawal, Senior Research Economist at Veros. Also with me is Eric Fox, Chief Economist at Veros. And we are very pleased to have you, Bob Corcoran, with us today. Welcome to Housing Pulse. Bob, would you like to tell our viewers something about yourself?
Hello, everybody. And Eric, it's very an honor to be here with you guys. You do such tremendous work in the industry to help our profession to move forward. I've been consulting and coaching in the real estate, mortgage, and title industry for the last 35 years. And when we look over that and we look at where today's market is, these podcasts that we're presenting to you today are so life-changing to the real estate community if people will grasp the changes they need to make to be successful. Rena, back to you.
So, Bob, I'm going to begin by asking you what is your outlook for the real estate market for the rest of 2025? Where do
When
you
we
think we are headed?
Okay, 2025, I think we have to go back to before COVID. Today's industry, we look over the last 5, 6 years, Rena and Eric, okay, a pit bull could have been successful in real estate. Okay, today we're back to the basics. We're back to pre-COVID conditions. We're seeing more balanced markets across the U.S., and it's all back to the basics. I think for an agent to be successful today, Eric and me, it's about the fundamentals. It's about an agent. An agent gets paid to list, prospect, sell, negotiate. So focus agents on your dollar productive activities. You have more follow up you have to do today than you did today. You got to stick to it. You got to go for the long haul. Leads, I always say if you generate a new lead, that lead should be, if it's an A lead, it should be closed in 60 days. But today, we're seeing agents, they don't want to persist, Rena and Eric. They don't want to do what it takes to be successful. And we need to change that mantra for the success of today's real estate agent.
Okay. So, do you have like any forecast in terms of, how much do you see home prices rising over the next 12 months or something? Do you think we're seeing? I know we are not seeing anything like COVID time price growth. That's all gone. So do you think like pre-COVID, low single digit growth, flat market? Do you see some correction? What is your opinion about the overall housing market for the US?
In my opinion, I think we're seeing real estate's going to be a little bit flat. Listing prices still continue to increase, but minimally. It's only because the number of properties available for a buyer to purchase, they're still not there to pre-COVID levels. So we're going to see, what's remarkable to me, because we're in a flat market, we're still seeing price increases in most markets. However, I think there is going to be a market correction, and we're going to see sellers have to realize their house isn't worth what it was 3 years ago. So we're only seeing about a 1 to 2% maybe price increase. However, at the end of the day, sellers have to realize their house isn't worth what it was 3 years ago.
So, Bob, one of the things we're seeing now that's maybe a little bit unusual, and it's for a variety of reasons, of course, is the stock market volatility.
I'm sorry, is the what, Eric?
Is the stock market volatility.
Mm-hmm.
401ks, which oftentimes are a big source of down payments for many buyers, come from that volatility. And so, question for you, do you feel like that's going to keep some would-be buyers on the sidelines? Or do you think just the opposite? They're going to say, I want to get my money out of the stock market, get it into something safe like real estate?
Oh, great question, Eric. And I get that a lot in these kinds of markets. My experience over 35 years, guys, when the stock market tanks, we usually see an increase in real estate. People pull their money out of stock market. They want to go into something a little bit more secure. Real estate has always been secure. People know that real estate is a hard investment, that they can see an appreciation. So when the stock market goes down, what we actually see is people pull their money in the stock market, invest in real estate. And I always love to see that.
What do you think about first-time buyers who probably are selling their stocks to, fund their down payments? Do you still see those guys coming in, or do you see a little pullback with them?
In my professional opinion, Rena, they need to pull their money from the stock market and invest in real estate. Real estate has always been and will always prove to be a sound investment. Sometimes real estate prices go up, they go down. But overall, if we look at the increase in value of people, okay, they're going to see a much better ROI on real estate than they ever will in stock market when you look for a buy and hold. Now, if we go to pre-COVID, it was buy, invest, sell. Today, we're in a different market. It's buy, invest, and hold market. And real estate will always give you a great long-term investment.
Now, another thing I wanted to ask you, Bob, is, we're seeing that the spring market is kind of subdued right now. It's not what it was or what it has been in past years. So are you watching some key housing market indicators or economic indicators that would suggest future changes in the real estate world for you? Is there something in particular that you're watching?
What we're watching today is the volatility of the real estate market.
Okay.
And the market is segmented between many avenues. You have your coastal areas, like where I live here in Florida. God only made so much waterfront. Waterfront properties will always maintain value. The bigger concern is more the Midwest. Which the Midwest has always been a very strong market. More importantly, Rena and Eric, it's been a stable market. The Midwest, you're not going to find a 20% increase in your values. Here in Florida, hey, I've owned numerous properties here in Florida. We have 50, 60, 70% increases in value. Midwest has always been extremely strong in the 1 to 3% increase in value. So I think as an investor, what do you want to do with your money? Do you want to increase it in high profile markets like coastal areas? Or do you want a strong return on investment, then go for the Midwest?
Okay. So following that, what are your thoughts about the mortgage rates? I mean, they're still around 6.6% as of last week. Do you think any easing in mortgage rates so people can go ahead and buy, or do you think they're going to stay the same, headed up?
Rena, I go back to when I bought my second house, paid a 23% interest rate. Eric, 23%, dude. You weren't even old enough to understand 23%. And I jumped on that rate because it was a good rate at the time. I remember 6 months later meeting my loan officer on the side of a highway because the rates went down from 23 to 17%. I met her on the side of the highway to sign my new loan docs to refi. So when we look at interest rates, as long as the interest rates, in my opinion, I'd love to see them in the 5 to 6 range, Rena and Eric. Okay, if they can stay at 5 to 6, we have balanced market.
I think that's a good place for them to be. And I'm old enough that when I bought my first house in Jupiter, Florida, I paid 10.75%, and I thought it was getting a great deal. That was back in the early 90s. But today's folks, I think even when we just go back a few years and look at the crazy low rates we got during COVID, we've heard of something called the lock-in effect, where a large number of people today have rates between 3 and 4%. And so the 6.5, 7% rates that we're seeing offered by banks today are viewed as high. So how do you think the elevated mortgage rates are impacting buyer demand today?
Great question, Eric. I was when I was buying another property, I was going to pay cash for it. I was talking to a friend of mine who was a loan officer, and he goes, "Bob, I thought you were a smart businessman." I said, "I am." He goes, "Then why would you pay cash? I'll give you a loan right now, $500,000, 2.2%." I'm like, "You got to be kidding me." Okay, because my investments in my other avenues were making 13, 14%. I said, "I'll take it." And he goes, "I knew you were a smart business guy." Right. So what we're challenged with, though, Eric, is we have a lot of people sitting out there with 2, 3, 4% interest rates. And they're saying, why would I sell if I have to buy at 7%? And the thing is, it's all about the cost of money. And so what we're seeing a lot about today, Eric and Rena, people are saying, "I'm not going to sell, I'm going to remodel." So we have a lot of people remodeling their current property they're living or expanding, building additions. At the end of the day, that's adding value to their property. However, will it get them to where they want to be when they're ready to sell? Because one thing every seller has in common, the house will eventually sell. At what price? And this is what real estate agents need to look at is when they're talking to clients, what's your long-term prospect for your property? Is this the property you want to live in? Is this the property you're buying as an investment to flip? So there's a lot of questions that come up, Eric and Rena. And people just don't know today. Right now, we're in a very uncertain market when it comes to what people actually want to do with their properties.
Sure. And are you seeing with new construction there in Florida, where you live in St. Petersburg, on the types or sizes of new homes that are being constructed because of the increased costs to build?
Yeah, what I'm actually seeing is a lot more that, you hear about a lot of tiny homes. I'm seeing a major influx in people that are interested in tiny homes because as an individual, they say, "How much space do I need?" I don't know if I fully agree with the tiny home concept because I'm used to living in big properties. However, it comes down to affordability, Eric. And somebody wants to live where they want to live in their dream house. And today I'm seeing consumers actually willing to consent to a smaller property to live where they want to live.
Yeah, interesting. That's very interesting. So it's almost like we are becoming a European model for
Bingo. That's exactly what I was going to say, Eric. You nailed it.
think alike.
Amen, bro. Great minds do.
One last question for you here today. So don't want to get political or require you to get political, but we've got the recent tariffs and uncertainties that are resulting from that. We're hearing about lumber. Maybe it's going to impact it. Maybe it's not. Of course, new homes need raw materials, and so given all this uncertainty, do you foresee any supply chain issues that could impact costs for new homes, building timelines, and so forth?
Eric, we're definitely going to see an impact. However, at the end of the day, people realize investing in real estate is a sound investment that will always give me a great return on investment. I think the tariffs, and 100% in support of Trump's philosophy on the tariffs right now. And I think we're into a stage where we're going to see a little bit of uncertainty. Okay, and what's going to happen with the chain supply, whether it's lumber, whether it's electrical, whether it's digital, we'll see some effects, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a small time problem. But in the USA, we're going to gain immensely.
That sounds great, Bob. Tell us something about your regional market. Tell us something about the western coast of Florida, I believe, because that region has recently been impacted by hurricanes. So, there's a lot of impact on condos not selling fast enough or people not buying those, the insurance issues.
Rena, you opened up a whole mouthful right there. Okay, down here, my wife Brenda and I got through going through a hurricane. We lost everything in our house, everything. 12 months, 18 months ago. Okay, from Hurricane Helene and Milton. Okay, thing is, at the end of the day, I don't care where you live in the U.S., we all have our issues. Mm-hmm. Florida, you have hurricanes. Midwest, you have tornadoes. Mm-hmm. Out east, you have earthquakes. Pick your poison. Where do you want to live? I choose to stay here in Florida. Mm-hmm. Yes, we have hurricanes. Okay. Well, what it has caused a lot of people because in Florida, what's interesting in global warming and all that is the hurricane structures that are happening here in Florida are becoming more intense. So all the articles I've read on predictability of hurricanes doesn't bode well for Florida. But at the end of the day, I don't care where you live in the U.S., you all have your issues on climate change.
Well, thank you so much, Bob. That was really an interesting discussion.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us today.